Tossing Rocks at Your Window, a Marichat Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction, Chapter 4. They haven't been driving for long when Noir notices a huge lake and points it out to her. Marichat's half asleep, leaning on the window when she hears him call her name, and she shakes herself awake. When her brain fully wakes up, her eyes trace his fingers, which is pointing to the lake. There's a fair amount of distance between them in it, but it's very big. "Yeah, we should go there," Marichat says with a smile.
"Maybe they'll have boats. Wouldn't that be nice? Rowing out to the middle of the lake?"
Chat wonders, grinning wildly. Marichat chuckles, even though they both know that there won't be a boat there. When they drive up to the lake, the ground completely changes, and it affects the way the car moves. Rather than a smooth ride, the car starts to jerk a little on the little gravel pieces, or maybe they're twigs. Chat curses himself under his breath, and Marichat just takes in deep breaths to calm herself. They do get there, and manage to do so all in one piece. Thank God. Marichat gets out of the car and breathes in the air. It's saltier there than back home. Back in Paris, it smells like bitter coffee and gasoline, but here she can almost taste the water, even though she's meters away. Chat comes to stand next to her. He smiles down at her and leans in infinitesimally closer. Her ears are barely registering the beep that comes from the car locking its doors. "Have you ever been to a lake before?" Marichat asks him. He shakes his head.
"Nope. I've always wanted to, though. I have some friends who always talk about lake houses and how fun it is to go tubing on them,"
he explains. Marichat nods and hums idly. She has been to a lake once, but it had been so long since then that she doesn't totally remember. Then again, she couldn't swim at the time, and she did nothing more than sit at the dock or snack in the kitchen. Now she can swim. Going into the lake would be way more fun. Kim especially adores lake houses, but he is a swimmer, so he's partial to them by nature. He's brought back so many stories about crazy times at his swim friend's lake house with his entire club team. Apparently he and 2 other friends went tubing, and they totally flipped over and all sprawled out across the water. It was super late at night, so no one could find them for nearly 10 minutes, and all they could do was shout at the boat to stand still. Kim said that it was fun to swim in the dark. It was more fun to swim in the dark than one would realize, but it was also panic-inducing to not know where the motor of the boat was. Marichat was surprised to learn that he got right back on the next day to go for another ride, because, well, if it happened to her, she'd never think of doing it again. Then again, Kim is sorta a daredevil. Same, but my friend told me a story that totally has me scared off from doing so. She shudders unconsciously.
"Ah, that's unfortunate."
They walk down to where the sand meets the water, and Marichat winces as she notices the sand clinging to her shoes. Chat, in his full leather getup, seems unbothered. There are little colorful rocks scattered around the pseudo beach, and Marichat wonders if anyone purposely put them there, or if they were just naturally occurring. She drops down to her knees and plucks out a silver grayish rock out of the ground. It shines and shimmers in the moonlight, and for a moment she considers if it could be an earring.
"What do you have there?"
Chat asks, looking at her curiously. Marichat holds up the little rock to him. "I have no idea," she replies simply. Chat takes the rock and holds it in the palm of his hand. It's sharply bright contrasted with his black suit. A gust of wind blows her on her face, and it makes her shiver the slightest bit. A yawn stretches over, and she closes her eyes for a second, growing more and more tired. Honestly, Marichat has no idea what time it is, but her best guess is that it's 2 or 3 in the morning, because that's when she was going to bed. That's when she's been going to bed lately, or at least that's when she's been getting tired enough to actually fall asleep. Chat notices this and sends her a wordless look asking if she's okay. She sends him a nod in response.
"Do you want to sit down?"
he asks. Marichat shakes her head. I don't want to get sand all over me, she explains, and he opens his mouth in a silent O shape, understandably.
Okay. We can just step in the water a little if you'd like.
She actually does want to do that, and begins to remove her shoes so they don't hold on to too much water and leave her feet gross and wet during the car ride home. For a moment, she looks at Chat Noir, wondering how the heck he'll get his shoes off, or if it's even possible. She doesn't have shoes when she's Ladybug. It's just a suit and tights covering her feet. Surprisingly, it has good traction when she's running after Akumas. Are you going to be able to take your shoes off, or is it a part of your suit like Ladybug's? She asks without really thinking about her words. With a cheeky grin, Chat Noir reaches out and slips his feet out of the chunky boots that are, as it turns out, not melted into the rest of his attire. Marionette makes a mental note to congratulate Plag on his sartorial choices. That is so much more convenient for late night lake days, not that they actually have a lot of those.
Nah, they aren't very hard to take off,
Chat says with almost a laugh to his voice. Don't worry about me, he teases her. Marionette blushes a bit and turns away so he doesn't see it. It seems that only a moment later does her words actually hit him and his expression grows suspicious.
Wait, he trails. How did you know Ladybug doesn't have shoes?
Marionette freezes and her brain races to think of a plausible answer that isn't the actual truth. Think. I've seen a lot of pictures of her, she squeaks out. From Alia, the lady blog. Yeah. She sometimes runs the articles through me because she's my best friend and they have a lot of pictures of her on it, so, I've just noticed. She nearly gasps out, but by some miracle, Chat Noir doesn't notice her panic. He just nods thoughtfully.
Ah, yes, the ladybug. I love it. Alia works really hard on it, right? It looks super professional, he says honestly.
Marionette beams with pride for her best friend. Alia really does work hard on her blog, and all of the hard work is really paid off. It's something she would never be able to do, but Alia is. That girl has some real talent that Marionette could only dream of having. Writing and analyzing has never been her thing, after all. It's crazy to her how Alia can write these amazing articles all of the time, and she's not even surprised that they've gained quite a following. Her best friend is a real work of magic, and brilliant at what she does. Even though Marionette is literally Ladybug, Alia doesn't know it, so her compliments on the blog doesn't have the same impact as her superhero self. She makes a mental note to tell Alia that Chat Noir loves her blog. That would be one of the best things for Alia to hear. She knows that, for sure. Alia is amazing, Marionette gloats proudly. Chat smiles.
I bet.
Chat Noir decides to take the first dip into the lake, stepping into it without as much as a second thought. Marionette follows suit, but she's much more gingerly about it. Her toes just barely grace the water, but the feeling is cold and she pulls back with a squeak. Chat Noir turns around and teasingly laughs at her, and she refutes it by sticking out her tongue. Marionette takes a deep breath and tries to ease herself into touching the freezing cold water again. It takes way more time than she's actually proud of, but she does manage to get both feet in without shouting out, cold, 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 cold. And that is enough of an achievement for her.
I'm getting old here, Chat jokes.
Marionette huffs at him much to his amusement. The cold water is awful, but it shocks her anyway and reminds her that she's in no way, shape, or form back home. Home doesn't have a freezing cold lake. Home doesn't have a vast night sky with sprinkles of stars. Home doesn't have a calm, deserted place for her and Chat Noir to just hang out at. For a second, Marionette looks down at the lake where the water is biting at her ankles with each little movement and waves. Then to Chat Noir as there is a wonderful laugh painted across his features. And then finally to the night sky that seems just so big and close and yet so far away at the same time. She's locking this memory up in her mind and intends on keeping it to herself forever. It's a beautiful and bright moment that isn't tainted with her responsibilities of Paris, the secrets hidden from her friends and family, or the awful, hollow, robotic feelings that were in her mere hours ago. This moment is serene and perfect, and everything she's ever wanted in her life. It's just a moment, and that's why it's the best thing in her entire life. Here, Marinette says grumpily as she gets to Chat Noir. He's a lot taller than she is, and therefore the water goes up a lot higher in her legs than his. Chat Noir finds this highly amusing, evidenced by his shining green eyes. "Aw, you're so brave," he sways, and it forces more water onto her legs. Marinette yelps. Chat nearly chokes from laughter. She scowls at him, but it does little to nothing with his eyes closed. Another moment, and they are quiet. The cold has numbed her skin, and now it's not the same sharp sting that it was before. It's become as comfortable as their silence. Marinette's eyes wander around, trying to imprint this moment in her psyche forever. She only tears her gaze away from the rolling lands around them when Chat Noir starts to speak. No, starts to whisper. "Can I confess something?" He's vulnerable. Of course. She's trying to be gentle, so as to not scare him, much like the voice you'd use for a stray animal that got lost in your house, just looking for their mother. I had to leave my house because I got in a fight with my family," Chat admits. They let it hang in the air for a minute. "I can barely remember how it started. I think I missed a practice or something. Or maybe I forgot to do one of the other things I was supposed to do, but whatever it was, my family isn't happy about it, and I got chewed out." He sighs, and Marinette holds onto his arm, so he knows that she's there for him. "Usually, I just stay calm, but this time, I don't know. I couldn't. I just got so angry, and I started yelling back, and it just escalated from there. And then they told me I was grounded, and there was suddenly a list of things I couldn't do, but the thing is," Chat lets out a laugh, and it's one she's never heard from him. It's bitter and resentful. "I never really got to do those things anyways. I never got to see friends, because it's the summertime, and I don't get to do anything. So, it got even worse, and my parent just stormed out of my room, and all I know is that is not a good thing." He dropped his head into his hands. "God, I was so angry. I just transformed then and there and got into the car and drove. And then I just drove and I ended up at your house and here we are," he says with a weak flourish. Marinette nods softly. "I'm glad you trust me to tell me that. And honestly, it wasn't a good thing considering the fact that she didn't want to know much about his personal life with the whole she's Ladybug thing, but Chat really did trust her civilian identity, not Ladybug, and she feels special knowing that he's willing to tell her. She's bared her soul to him earlier, so now it's a level playing field." "Thanks for listening," Chat says. "It's just, my family is so strict. I have so many rules to follow, and normally I just try to be good and listen and do everything I should do without a second thought or word, but tonight? No, not tonight. I just lost it and got blind with rage," Chat says with a sheepish smile. "Isn't that just human, though?" Marinette says thoughtfully. Chat looks at her, totally perplexed. "Isn't that just human to get angry?" she repeats. "We're not creatures with the most perfect temperament. We're complex and unexpected. Rage is a natural emotion when something is hurting you. Sometimes it can be irrational, but your situation sounds pretty rational to me," she says, trying to be helpful. "There's always an emotion before anger. For you, I think you're just tired of pushing everything you want aside. You're tired of being caged, and at the time that was the only way you could express it." "Yeah," Chat breathes. "That's exactly how I feel. Trapped. All of the time." Marinette reaches out a hand and touches his face gently. And I'm so sorry.
He smiles at her a little bit. Nah, don't say sorry. You're making me feel less trapped. Her face goes red.
Happy to help,
she says audibly. Thank you. In a second, Shout's face gets that much closer, and suddenly she can see all the little details on his mask. She can see the few freckles on the tip of his nose, and it feels like they're breathing the same air. He's so close, and she's so okay with that. Her eyes flutter closed, and all she can feel is his lips on hers, and a warm feeling flooding through her. Even where the water is submerging her. It's not a messy kiss. It doesn't say anything more than, I'm here. And it's by no means her first kiss with him, but it's the first one that is real. They break apart within a second, and he stares back at her with wide eyes, full of sparkle and glow, and she's sure she looks the same. Back to the car?
Yep, yeah, sure. Let's do that.